The coins had not hit the floor yet, but trouble was already waiting. Nobody inside that elegant Atlanta restaurant could see it coming. The afternoon looked ordinary. The music drifted softly through the dining room. Customers enjoyed quiet conversations over expensive meals. Sunlight stretched across polished floors and spotless tables. Everything appeared calm on the surface. Yet beneath that calm, a single choice was preparing to expose something ugly. Before the day ended, careers would collapse, secrets would surface, and lives would change forever. Several hours earlier, Maxwell Brooks sat alone inside a corner office high above downtown Atlanta. Papers covered every inch of his desk. Acquisition reports rested beside lease agreements and inspection schedules. The largest deal of his professional life had finally closed. 31 restaurants now belonged to his company. Years of discipline, sacrifice, and relentless work had brought him to that moment. Most executives would have celebrated immediately. Maxwell chose a different path. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. His assistant stepped inside, carrying notes about an upcoming announcement. Marketing teams were preparing press releases, reporters were waiting, investors expected appearances and photographs. Maxwell listened quietly before shaking his head. He cancelled the remainder of his schedule. The decision surprised her. Important meetings disappeared from his calendar within seconds. Instead of preparing for cameras, Maxwell reached for an old canvas jacket hanging behind his chair. The worn fabric looked completely out of place in an executive office. His assistant already understood what was happening. Maxwell had followed the same habit for years. Whenever he purchased a business, he visited anonymously before introducing himself. He never arrived in luxury vehicles. He never announced his position. He wanted employees to reveal their true character. Numbers on reports could explain profits. Spreadsheets could measure costs. But only real interactions exposed how people treated those they believed had no influence. Maxwell trusted those observations more than any presentation boardroom executives could create. A short drive later, his aging sedan rolled into the parking lot of Magnolia Grill. The restaurant stood proudly on a desirable Atlanta corner. Large windows reflected golden afternoon light. Carefully trimmed hedges lined the entrance. A polished brass sign displayed the restaurant name with quiet confidence. Everything suggested professionalism and success. Customers dressed in expensive clothing entered and exited without hurry. The location looked exactly like the kind of establishment executives would proudly showcase. Maxwell remained seated inside the car for a moment. Dust covered his work boots from an earlier site visit. His cap carried no logo. The canvas jacket looked ordinary. Anyone seeing him would assume he was a laborer finishing a long day. That was precisely the point. He stepped out, adjusted the brim of his cap, and walked toward the entrance without drawing attention. Inside, the atmosphere felt warm and inviting. The scent of butter, coffee, and fresh pastry filled the air. Soft jazz floated through hidden speakers. Afternoon sunlight filtered through tall windows and painted the room in gold. A young woman behind the counter smiled immediately when she saw him. Her name tag identified her as Denise. She appeared kind, attentive, and slightly nervous, the type of employee who genuinely cared about customers. She welcomed him warmly and asked what he wanted. Maxwell ordered only coffee and a slice of pecan pie. Denise entered the order and gave him the total. Without hesitation, he placed a $20 bill on the counter. The interaction seemed completely ordinary. For a brief moment, it appeared his visit would be uneventful. Then another hand moved between them. A man emerged from a hallway behind the register. His name tag identified him as Darren Cole, the floor manager. His smile never reached his eyes. He stopped Denise from accepting the payment and announced that he would handle the transaction personally. The warmth that had filled the room suddenly felt weaker. Denise immediately became quiet, her shoulders tightened. Something about her reaction caught Maxwell's attention. Darren picked up the bill and examined it slowly. He turned it beneath the lights. He studied Maxwell's clothes. He looked at the boots, the jacket, and the cap. His expression carried judgment before a single accusation left his mouth. Customers nearby glanced over briefly before returning to their meals. Nobody said anything. Nobody questioned the strange behavior. Maxwell remained calm. He had walked into restaurants like this before. He knew patience revealed more truth than confrontation. Darren continued staring at the bill, as though searching for a reason to distrust it. Denise looked uncomfortable. The music still played, the sunlight still glowed through the windows, yet something darker had entered the room. Maxwell felt it immediately. And as Darren finally lifted his eyes toward him, the first crack in Magnolia Grill's polished image quietly began to appear. Darren Cole held the $20 bill beneath the light longer than necessary. The dining room remained quiet, but the atmosphere had changed. Conversation softened. A few customers glanced over their menus. Denise stood motionless behind the counter, her hands folded tightly together. She already knew where this situation was heading. Maxwell noticed the tension in her face immediately. The bill passed every inspection. Nothing appeared suspicious. There was no stain, no damage, and certainly no sign it was counterfeit. Yet Darren continued studying it as if he expected the money to confess a crime. Maxwell watched calmly. Years of experience had taught him that prejudice often disguised itself as procedure. Some people searched for excuses after deciding their conclusions. Finally, Darren lowered the bill. Instead of apologizing, he narrowed his eyes. His attention shifted from the money to Maxwell himself. The work boots received another glance. The faded jacket received another judgment. Darren looked at him the way certain people looked at strangers they had already decided did not belong. "Where did you get this?" Darren asked. The question hung awkwardly between them. Maxwell answered evenly. He explained that he had received it from a bank. The response should have ended the conversation. Instead, Darren continued. He demanded additional verification. Denise quietly suggested that the bill was obviously legitimate. Darren immediately silenced her. His sharp tone startled several nearby customers. The young employee lowered her eyes. Her confidence disappeared instantly. Maxwell noticed everything. People often revealed their true character not through grand decisions, but through small moments. The way a manager treated a customer. The way a supervisor treated an employee. The way power was exercised when nobody expected consequences. Those details mattered. Darren eventually returned the bill to the counter. His words carried a different message now. He spoke about previous problems. He mentioned certain customers causing trouble. Then he used a phrase that immediately drew Maxwell's attention. "People like you," Darren said. The words arrived wrapped in a casual tone, but their meaning landed heavily. Maxwell remained calm. He simply requested his coffee, pie, and correct change. Nothing more, nothing less. Instead of completing the transaction professionally, Darren leaned against the register and continued talking. He described Maxwell's appearance with obvious disapproval. He suggested that someone dressed like him should be grateful to receive service at all. The remarks became increasingly uncomfortable. A couple near the windows exchanged uneasy looks. Nobody intervened. Denise appeared embarrassed. She stood frozen behind the counter. The espresso machine hissed softly in the background, while steam curled into the air. The jazz music continued, but it could not soften the growing hostility. Maxwell requested his change again. Darren opened the register and counted the money slowly, almost theatrically. When he finished, he pushed several bills across the counter. Maxwell glanced down and immediately noticed the mistake. The amount was short. He politely pointed it out. Darren shrugged. The manager insisted the total was correct. Maxwell calmly explained the calculation. The order cost less than $10. The remaining balance should have been simple. Darren refused to acknowledge it. Instead, he implied that Maxwell had counted incorrectly. The accusation itself was insulting. The confidence behind it was worse. A small line of customers had formed near the register. Some watched openly. Others pretended not to notice. The room seemed trapped between curiosity and discomfort. Everyone understood something unfair was happening, yet nobody wanted to become involved. Maxwell felt a familiar disappointment. Disrespect hurt. Silence hurt differently. Darren stepped around the counter and moved closer. His voice lowered, but it remained loud enough for nearby tables to hear. He explained that customers dressed like Maxwell often created problems. He suggested that other restaurants would have refused service entirely. Maxwell never raised his voice. He simply repeated his request. Correct change. Coffee, pie, nothing else. That refusal to react seemed to frustrate Darren even more. Power often depended on provoking a response. Without anger, intimidation lost much of its strength. Darren expected confrontation. Instead, he encountered patience. The manager's smile vanished completely. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Denise gathered enough courage to say something. Her voice trembled, but she quietly confirmed that Maxwell's math was correct. The register balance was indeed short. She even offered to fix the mistake herself. The reaction was immediate. Darren turned on her sharply. His threat carried enough force to silence the entire room. Denise stepped back, her eyes filled with tears she fought desperately to hide. The young woman clearly needed the job. Everyone could see it. Maxwell gave her a small, reassuring nod. She looked away before her emotions became visible. Darren mistook the silence around him for support. The manager believed he controlled the situation completely. He controlled the register, he controlled the staff, he controlled the dining room. Or at least he thought he did. Then he called for security. A large man named Marcus approached from near the entrance. His expression suggested discomfort rather than aggression. He had witnessed the entire exchange. He knew something was wrong, yet he also understood the pressure of following orders. Darren instructed him to monitor Maxwell closely. The implication was unmistakable. Several customers shifted uneasily in their seats. Maxwell accepted his coffee when it finally arrived. Some of it spilled across the saucer after Darren shoved it forward carelessly. Even then, Maxwell remained composed. He took a small sip and placed the cup back down. Then he asked a simple question. "What's your full name?" Darren looked surprised. The manager proudly gave his name and mentioned how many years he had worked there. His confidence returned immediately. Experience had convinced him he was untouchable. Maxwell listened carefully. A quiet expression crossed his face. Not anger, not embarrassment. A decision. He picked up his coffee, carried it toward a table near the back of the restaurant, and sat down alone. From beneath the brim of his cap, he watched the room continue moving around him. Meanwhile, Darren remained behind the register, completely unaware that the most important lesson of his career had already begun. Maxwell remained seated near the back wall, quietly finishing his coffee and pecan pie. From a distance, he looked like an ordinary customer enjoying a late afternoon break. Nothing about his appearance suggested wealth, influence, or authority. That illusion was exactly what he wanted. People often revealed their true selves when they believed nobody important was watching. The dining room slowly returned to its routine. Forks moved across plates, conversations resumed in cautious whispers. Jazz drifted gently through the speakers. Sunlight stretched across polished hardwood floors, yet beneath the restaurant's polished appearance, tension lingered like a storm cloud refusing to leave. Darren never stopped watching. Every few moments, the manager glanced toward Maxwell's table. His arms remained folded across his chest. His expression suggested suspicion rather than professionalism. Denise noticed it, Marcus noticed it, several customers noticed it. Maxwell noticed it most of all. He finished the final bite of pie and took another sip of coffee. The dessert was excellent. The crust was flaky and rich. The pecans were perfectly roasted. The kitchen clearly employed talented people. That realization saddened him. Good businesses often failed because of bad leadership. The employees cooking meals and cleaning tables rarely caused the damage. More often, it started with people who believed authority excused poor behavior. Maxwell remained seated for several more minutes. He observed interactions between staff members. He watched how customers were greeted. He watched which employees appeared comfortable and which seemed nervous. Patterns began emerging. Denise smiled naturally when helping guests. Marcus treated everyone respectfully. Several servers moved efficiently through the dining room. Yet whenever Darren approached, conversations became shorter. Employees grew noticeably quieter. Fear leaves fingerprints. Maxwell had spent decades learning how to recognize them. Eventually, he stood from his table. He carried his empty cup and dessert plate toward the counter. Denise immediately stepped forward with her usual kindness. "Thank you," Maxwell said. "The pie was excellent." A grateful smile appeared on her face. Before she could respond, Darren stepped between them, again. The interruption felt deliberate. "You're not leaving yet," Darren said. The words caught several customers by surprise. Maxwell looked at him calmly. "I paid. I finished my meal." "I've been watching you," Darren replied. His tone suggested he had uncovered something suspicious. The manager accused Maxwell of sitting too long. He claimed Maxwell had been studying the restaurant, looking at exits, observing customers, watching staff. Maxwell almost laughed. Every accusation happened to be true, but not for the reasons Darren imagined. "I was eating pie," Maxwell answered. The response only irritated Darren further. The manager insisted that Maxwell's behavior resembled someone planning a theft. The accusation spread through the dining room like smoke. Several customers looked up immediately. One woman lowered her fork. Another customer quietly shook his head. Even Marcus appeared uncomfortable. The security guard shifted his weight and glanced toward Darren. "I don't think that's fair," Marcus said carefully. Darren ignored him. Power had made him careless. The manager demanded that Maxwell empty his pockets. The room fell silent. Nobody could believe what they were hearing. Denise looked horrified. Marcus looked trapped. Maxwell stood perfectly still. The request itself was unreasonable. Everyone knew it. Yet Darren presented it as normal procedure. His confidence depended entirely on one assumption. He believed Maxwell lacked the power to refuse. After several seconds, Maxwell slowly reached into his jacket. A folded document appeared first, then car keys, then a worn leather wallet. He placed each item carefully on the counter. Nothing more, nothing suspicious, nothing stolen, exactly what any ordinary customer might carry. Darren grabbed the wallet immediately. He searched through it without permission. He examined cash, business cards, identification sleeves. Yet he never actually looked closely enough to discover whose wallet he held. That detail would matter later, very much later. After finding nothing, Darren tossed the wallet back carelessly. Denise caught it before it fell. The young woman's face tightened with frustration. Maxwell thanked her quietly. Darren then reached for the folded document. Before he could open it, Maxwell placed a hand over the paper. Not aggressively, simply firmly. "That's personal," Maxwell said. The two men locked eyes. For a brief moment, the restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Then Darren stepped back and smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of someone searching desperately for a way to win. The manager opened the register once more. Inside remained the money he had failed to return earlier. The amount was exactly what Maxwell was owed. Several coins rested among the bills. Darren stared at Maxwell. Maxwell stared back. The silence became almost unbearable. Then Darren scooped the remaining change into his hand. A few customers straightened in their seats. Something about his expression felt dangerous. Denise immediately sensed it. "Please don't," she whispered. Darren ignored her. His eyes never left Maxwell. The room seemed frozen. The jazz music ended between tracks. For several seconds, only the hum of kitchen equipment remained. Then Darren threw the coins. Metal exploded across the tile floor. Quarters bounced beneath tables. Nickels spun across the room. Pennies scattered toward the walls. The sound echoed through the restaurant like breaking glass. Every customer looked up. Every employee stopped moving. The entire dining room witnessed what happened next. Darren pointed toward the scattered coins, his face twisted with contempt, and then he spoke words so cruel, so humiliating, that several people immediately looked away in shock. The insult landed harder than the coins themselves. Denise covered her mouth. Marcus stepped backward. A couple near the windows quietly gathered their belongings and headed for the exit. Yet Maxwell never moved. He looked down at the scattered change. Then he slowly lifted his eyes toward Darren. His voice remained calm, controlled, steady. "Who's your regional director?" The question stunned everyone. Darren laughed loudly. Customers exchanged confused looks. The manager proudly provided the name, convinced the threat meant nothing. He believed corporate leadership would always support him. 6 years of unchecked authority had taught him that lesson. Maxwell listened carefully. Then he pulled out his phone. The entire restaurant watched. He tapped the screen a few times and raised the device to his ear. The call connected almost immediately. Maxwell spoke only a handful of quiet words, nothing more, nothing dramatic. Yet something about his tone caused Marcus to straighten. It caused Denise to stare. It caused a strange feeling to settle over the room. Because the voice on that call did not sound like a customer filing a complaint. It sounded like a man giving an order. And less than a minute later, headlights suddenly appeared outside the restaurant windows. Headlights swept across the restaurant windows, cutting through the late afternoon sunlight. Every head turned toward the parking lot. The vehicle arrived faster than anyone expected. Tires rolled to a stop. An engine shut off. A door slammed. Inside Magnolia Grill, nobody spoke. The tension felt heavy enough to touch. Maxwell calmly placed his phone back into his pocket and remained seated. He looked completely relaxed. His hands rested loosely on the table. His expression never changed. The scattered coins still covered portions of the floor. Darren stood near the register with growing irritation. The manager believed he still controlled the situation. He was wrong. The restaurant door swung open. A woman in a sharp grey blazer entered with determined steps. Her pace was fast. Her face carried concern. She scanned the dining room before the door fully closed behind her. Several employees recognized her immediately. So did Darren. Her name was Patricia Reynolds, regional director. Darren's confidence instantly returned. He straightened his tie and smiled. Relief flashed across his face. He assumed she had arrived to support management. He assumed the customer complaint would disappear after a quick explanation. He had made that assumption before. It had always worked. Patricia moved through the dining room without hesitation. Darren stepped forward. "Patricia, listen, I can explain." She walked past him, without slowing, without acknowledging him, without even turning her head. The smile disappeared from Darren's face. His sentence died halfway out of his mouth. Patricia continued across the restaurant until she reached Maxwell's table. Then something happened that nobody expected. Her expression changed completely. The urgency remained, but now it mixed with something deeper. Concern. Respect, even fear. Not fear of danger. Fear of failure. The kind that appears when a leader realizes something terrible happened under their watch. She stopped directly in front of Maxwell. The entire restaurant watched. Then she spoke clearly enough for every customer and employee to hear. "Mr. Brooks, I am deeply sorry. I came as quickly as I could." Silence followed. Absolute silence. The words echoed across the dining room. Mr. Brooks. The name drifted through the restaurant like smoke. Denise froze. Marcus stared. Customers exchanged confused looks. Darren blinked repeatedly. His face lost color. "Mr. Brooks," he repeated. Patricia turned slowly toward him. The look in her eyes could have stopped traffic. "Darren," she said, "this is Maxwell Brooks, founder and chief executive officer of Brooks Hospitality Group." The room stopped breathing. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the kitchen staff appeared frozen behind the service window. Patricia continued. 3 days ago, Brooks Hospitality finalized the acquisition of this location and every restaurant in this chain. Mr. Brooks is the owner of this restaurant. The words landed like thunder. A fork slipped from someone's hand. A glass clinked softly against a table. Denise's eyes widened. Marcus took a full step backward. The customers nearest the counter stared openly. Darren looked from Patricia to Maxwell and back again. Nothing made sense anymore. The jacket, the boots, the old car, the coffee, the pie, every assumption he had made began collapsing at once. "No," Darren whispered. The denial sounded weak, desperate. Maxwell rose from his chair. Not quickly, not dramatically, just calmly. The movement somehow carried more authority than any raised voice could have. He walked toward the counter and unfolded the document Darren had tried to inspect earlier. The acquisition agreement spread across the polished surface. Company letterhead stretched across the top. Legal signatures covered the bottom. Property addresses filled the pages. Every location in the chain appeared there, including Magnolia Grill. Maxwell placed one finger on the signature line. His signature, his company, his restaurant. The reality became impossible to deny. Darren stared at the paperwork, then at the scattered coins still lying across the floor. Then at Maxwell. The manager looked physically ill. His face drained completely. Patricia stepped closer. Her voice became cold and precise. "Did you throw change at this man?" Darren swallowed. No answer came. "Did you insult him in front of customers and employees?" Still no answer. Customers watched silently. Several phones were now visible, recording, capturing every second. Patricia's expression hardened further. "I asked you a question." Darren searched the room for support. He found none. Not from customers, not from staff, not from Marcus, not even from Denise. Everyone had seen what happened. Everyone knew the truth. Maxwell spoke before Darren could answer. His voice remained calm. "You need to understand something, Darren." The manager slowly looked up. "You did not disrespect the owner of this restaurant today." The room became even quieter. "You disrespected a man you believed had no power." The words struck harder than any shout. Several customers lowered their eyes because they knew he was right. The problem was never mistaken identity. The problem was how Darren treated people he considered unimportant. Maxwell continued, "If you had known who I was, you would have smiled, you would have been polite. You would have offered excellent service." Darren's mouth opened. No words emerged. But the next customer wearing old boots and a worn jacket would have received exactly what I received today. A woman near the windows quietly wiped tears from her eyes. Denise stood motionless behind the register. Hope slowly replaced fear in her expression. For the first time all afternoon, someone had finally said what everyone else was thinking. Maxwell turned toward her. "You spoke up when nobody else would." Denise looked shocked. Her eyes immediately filled with tears. "You did the right thing," Maxwell said. She nodded silently. The acknowledgement meant more than she could express. Then Maxwell turned back toward Patricia. "I've seen enough." Those 3 words changed everything. Darren suddenly found his voice. Excuses poured out. Apologies followed. Explanations came next. He insisted he had not known. He claimed everything was a misunderstanding. The desperation was obvious. Maxwell listened for a moment. Then he interrupted. "That's exactly the problem." The manager fell silent again. "You're not sorry for what happened. You're sorry it happened to me." The truth settled over the restaurant like a final verdict. And for the first time that afternoon, Darren Cole realized he was no longer the most powerful person in the room. The restaurant remained silent after Maxwell's words settled over the room. Nobody rushed to speak. Nobody attempted to defend Darren. The truth had exposed itself too clearly. Excuses could not cover it anymore. Darren stood near the counter looking smaller than before. Just minutes earlier, he had controlled the room. He had controlled the register, the staff, and the atmosphere. He had spoken with certainty because he believed nobody could challenge him. Now everything had changed. Patricia folded her arms and faced him directly. "Effective immediately," she said. "You are suspended pending a full investigation." The announcement landed heavily. Darren stared at her, his face twisted with disbelief. "Suspended." The word barely escaped his mouth. Patricia did not soften her expression. "Turn over your keys, your access badge, and all management credentials before leaving the building." For several seconds, Darren simply stood there. For several, his mind seemed unable to process what was happening. The authority he had relied on for years was disappearing in front of everyone. Slowly, he reached into his pocket. A ring of keys emerged first. Front doors, storage rooms, office locks, supply closets. One by one, the symbols of his authority landed on the counter with a dull metallic sound. Then came the badge. He stared at it for a moment. The small piece of plastic had represented power for years. Employees listened when he spoke. Customers obeyed when he demanded. People stayed quiet when he crossed lines. Now the badge rested uselessly beside the keys. Denise watched the moment carefully. Relief flickered across her face. Not celebration. Relief. The difference mattered. She was not happy to see someone lose a position. She was relieved to see accountability finally arrive. Patricia nodded toward Marcus. "Please escort Mr. Cole outside." Marcus stepped forward. The irony was impossible to ignore. Only minutes earlier, Darren had ordered him to monitor Maxwell. Now Marcus was escorting Darren from the restaurant. Life had a way of turning tables without warning. Darren looked around desperately. He searched for sympathy, understanding, support, anything. He found none. The customers avoided his eyes. The employees remained silent. Even Marcus looked straight ahead. The manager took several steps toward the exit before suddenly stopping. He turned back toward Maxwell. "I gave years to this place," he said. His voice cracked. "Years. You're throwing all that away over one mistake." The question hung in the air. Several customers looked toward Maxwell. Everyone waited. Maxwell bent down slowly and picked up a coin from the floor. A nickel, the same type Darren had thrown moments earlier. He turned it over between his fingers, then placed it gently beside the surrendered keys. Throwing change at someone and demanding humiliation isn't a mistake, Maxwell said quietly. Nobody moved. Nobody interrupted. It's a choice. The simplicity of the statement made it even more powerful. Darren lowered his eyes. For the first time all afternoon, he had no response. Marcus guided him toward the exit. The door opened, warm sunlight poured inside, then the door closed again, and Darren Cole was gone. The restaurant remained silent long after he left. The absence felt almost as noticeable as his presence had. Patricia released a slow breath. Several employees did the same. The tension that had dominated the afternoon finally began lifting. But Maxwell was not finished. His attention shifted toward Marcus. The security guard immediately straightened. He looked uncomfortable, ashamed. Maxwell approached him calmly. "You hesitated," he said. Marcus nodded. "Yes, sir." "You knew something was wrong." Another nod. The admission seemed difficult. Marcus looked toward the floor. "I did." Maxwell studied him for a moment. The restaurant watched quietly. "Then why did you step forward?" The question carried no anger, only honesty. Marcus swallowed. His answer came slowly. "Because he was my supervisor." The room remained silent. Many people understood that feeling. The pressure to obey. The fear of consequences. The desire to protect a paycheck. Maxwell nodded thoughtfully. An order doesn't become right simply because someone with authority gives it. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. The words struck home. "I know," he admitted. "Good." Maxwell's voice softened. "Then remember how this felt." Marcus finally looked up. The security guard's eyes were red, not from tears, from regret. "I will," he said. Maxwell believed him. The conversation ended with a simple nod. No lecture, no humiliation, just accountability. Then Maxwell turned toward the dining room. Customers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Many avoided eye contact. A few stared at their plates. Others looked toward the windows. The silence carried a different weight now. Not fear, reflection. Maxwell glanced across the room. He remembered every face, the people who watched, the people who stayed silent, the people who chose comfort over courage. He understood them, but understanding did not erase disappointment. Without saying a word, he walked toward the scattered coins still resting across the floor. A quarter near a chair, a dime beneath a table, several pennies near the wall. Slowly, Maxwell knelt. The movement shocked everyone. Denise rushed forward immediately. "Mr. Brooks, please, let me help." He smiled gently. "I've got it." One by one, he collected every coin, the exact amount he had been owed. Nothing more, nothing less. When he finished, he walked to the counter. The restaurant watched carefully. Denise watched. Patricia watched. Marcus watched. Maxwell opened the tip jar sitting beside the register. Then he dropped every coin inside. Metal rattled against glass. The sound echoed softly through the room. "These belong to the people who earned them," he said. The employees exchanged emotional looks. Several customers lowered their heads. Nobody could forget the image. The owner of the restaurant kneeling to gather the change thrown at him. The same change he refused to keep. As the final coin settled at the bottom of the jar, nobody realized a video recorded from Table 6 had already been uploaded online. And before the sun rose the next morning, millions of people would see exactly what happened inside Magnolia Grill. By sunrise, the video had spread far beyond Atlanta. What began as a recording from a nearby table became something much larger. The footage captured every important moment. Darren examining the $20 bill. Darren accusing Maxwell without reason. Darren throwing the coins. Darren demanding humiliation from a man he believed held no power. People watched the video once, then they watched it again. Many could not believe what they were seeing. The clip spread across social media at extraordinary speed. Friends shared it with family. Co-workers sent it through group messages. Community organizations reposted it. Local activists discussed it. Journalists downloaded copies before anyone could remove them. The story no longer belonged to Magnolia Grill. It belonged to everyone who recognized something familiar inside it. By midday, hundreds of thousands of people had watched the footage. By evening, the number climbed into the millions. The comments arrived faster than anyone could read them. Anger filled many responses, disappointment filled others, but beneath every reaction ran the same theme. People were not shocked because the incident happened. They were shocked because they had seen versions of it before. Thousands shared personal stories. Stories about being followed through stores, stories about being ignored in restaurants, stories about being treated differently because of appearance, clothing, race, or assumptions. The details changed. The feeling remained the same. A simple phrase soon appeared beneath countless posts. "Pick it up, justice." Nobody knew who wrote it first. The word spread anyway. Within hours, the phrase became a movement. Meanwhile, inside Brooks Hospitality headquarters, phones rang continuously. Reporters requested interviews, investors requested updates, community leaders requested meetings. Public relations teams worked through the night, yet Maxwell remained surprisingly calm. He had not planned for any of this. He never intended to become the center of a national conversation. All he wanted was to understand how employees treated ordinary people. Now the entire country was paying attention. Patricia arrived at headquarters early the next morning carrying several folders. Her expression revealed concern. Not because of public attention, because of what she had discovered. The incident inside Magnolia Grill was not isolated. As the company began reviewing records, troubling patterns emerged. Complaints, reports, customer concerns, several documents mentioned Darren's name. Maxwell reviewed each file carefully. One involved a couple who felt they received different treatment than other customers. Another described a delivery driver publicly embarrassed during a routine pickup. A third involved a young customer questioned about whether she could afford the menu. Individually, each complaint seemed small. Together, they formed something impossible to ignore, a pattern. The most disturbing detail was not the complaints themselves. It was what happened afterward. Nothing, no meaningful investigations, no corrective action, no accountability. The files simply disappeared into administrative systems and remained there. Someone had ignored them. Perhaps several people had. Maxwell leaned back in his chair. The realization disappointed him deeply. Bad behavior rarely survives alone. It usually survives because others allow it. Because someone looks away. Because someone stays quiet. Because someone decides addressing a problem feels harder than ignoring it. Across Atlanta, investigative reporter Maya Bennett reached a similar conclusion. She had watched the viral video like everyone else. Unlike most viewers, she immediately began digging deeper. Phone calls filled her morning. Former employees answered questions. Past customers shared experiences. Public records revealed additional details. Every conversation pointed toward the same uncomfortable truth. The incident at Magnolia Grill was not created in a single afternoon. It had been building for years. Maya interviewed former staff members who described a workplace ruled by fear. Employees learned quickly when to stay silent. They learned which complaints would be ignored. They learned when speaking up could threaten their jobs. Several interviews ended with the same sentence. Everyone knew. Those two words stayed with Maya. Everyone knew. Yet nothing changed until someone powerful experienced it personally. The observation troubled her. It troubled Maxwell too. Later that afternoon, he gathered senior leadership inside a conference room. Large windows overlooked the city skyline. The atmosphere felt serious. Nobody treated the meeting like ordinary business. Maxwell stood at the head of the table. No presentation slides appeared. No financial reports were discussed. Instead, he placed several complaint files in the center of the table. The room remained quiet. "These should have mattered before yesterday," he said. Nobody disagreed. The executives understood exactly what he meant. The viral video had not created the problem. It had revealed it. The distinction mattered. Maxwell challenged every leader present. He asked difficult questions. How many complaints had been dismissed? How many employees felt unheard? How many customers walked away believing nobody cared? No one possessed comfortable answers. The discussion lasted hours. By the end, several executives looked exhausted. Yet something important had happened. For the first time, the company confronted reality directly. No excuses, no public relations language, no shortcuts, only truth. As evening settled across Atlanta, Magnolia Grill remained unusually quiet. Customers still visited, employees still worked, but everyone felt the weight of recent events. Denise, especially, she replayed the afternoon repeatedly in her mind. The coins, the silence, the humiliation, the courage it took to speak, the fear she felt afterward. Then she remembered something else. Maxwell's words. "You spoke up when nobody else would." Those words stayed with her. For years, Denise had doubted whether speaking mattered. Now she wondered if that single moment had changed more than she realized. Across the city, millions continued sharing the video. The story kept growing, reporters kept investigating, questions kept multiplying. And hidden somewhere inside old company records, another discovery was waiting. A discovery that would expose not only Darren's behavior, but also the people who helped protect it for years. The discovery arrived quietly. No dramatic announcement preceded it. No reporter broke the story first. No executive expected it. The evidence simply surfaced during a routine review of archived records. And once it appeared, everything changed. 3 days after the video went viral, investigators continued examining complaint files connected to Magnolia Grill. Maxwell had ordered a complete audit. Every report would be reviewed. Every unresolved concern would be examined. Nothing would remain hidden. At first, the process seemed straightforward. Then someone noticed missing records. Entire sections of complaint histories contained unusual gaps. Reference numbers existed without supporting documents. Case files appeared closed without documented investigations. Customer reports vanished between submission and resolution. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Someone had been interfering with the system. A technology specialist spent hours recovering archived backups. Deleted files resurfaced. Internal messages reappeared. Forgotten records returned. The deeper investigators looked, the worse the situation became. Maxwell sat in a conference room reviewing the findings late into the evening. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Atlanta's skyline glowed beneath dark clouds. Most employees had already gone home. The remaining leadership team stayed silent. Nobody liked what they were seeing. 3 major complaints connected directly to Darren had never received proper investigation. 3 different customers, different circumstances, same outcome. Dismissal. One report described a couple treated differently than customers who arrived later. Another documented a delivery worker publicly embarrassed in front of staff. A third involved a young customer questioned about whether she could afford her meal. Each complaint contained witness statements. Each complaint contained supporting details. Each complaint should have triggered action. None did. Someone ensured that happened. The answer emerged inside a collection of internal emails. A district supervisor named Philip Turner appeared repeatedly throughout the correspondence. His position gave him authority over multiple locations, including Magnolia Grill. Whenever complaints involving Darren surfaced, Philip handled them personally. Or more accurately, he buried them personally. The evidence left little room for interpretation. Several emails contained instructions preventing further review. Others discouraged follow-up interviews. Some simply closed investigations without explanation. One message stood out among the rest. Only 3 words appeared inside it. Handled. Don't worry, that was all. 3 words, enough to erase someone's complaint, enough to protect bad behavior, enough to tell employees their concerns did not matter. Maxwell read the message several times. The simplicity angered him more than lengthy explanations could have. Dignity had been dismissed with 3 casual words. Across the city, reporter Maya Bennett uncovered many of the same facts. Former employees trusted her enough to speak openly. Some requested anonymity. Others did not. Their stories shared common themes: fear, favoritism, silence. Employees described complaints disappearing without explanation. Customers described never receiving responses. Several workers admitted they stopped reporting problems because they expected nothing to happen. One former server said something Maya never forgot. The system wasn't broken. The system was working exactly the way certain people wanted it to work. The statement appeared in her notebook underlined 3 times. Because it felt true. The following evening, Maya's investigation aired on local television. Millions watched. The report included interviews, documents, timelines, and internal correspondence. Screens displayed recovered emails. Former employees described their experiences. Customers shared stories that had remained unheard for years. The public reaction was immediate. Anger returned stronger than before. The viral video had already captured attention. Now people understood the larger story. The issue was never one manager. It was a culture, a system, a chain of people protecting one another while ignoring everyone else. The spotlight expanded quickly. Questions reached corporate offices. Questions reached community leaders. Questions reached investors. Most importantly, questions reached employees throughout the company. People wanted answers. They deserved them. The next morning, Maxwell released a public statement. Short, direct, honest. He acknowledged that what happened at Magnolia Grill represented more than one person's failure. He admitted the company had allowed warning signs to remain ignored. He promised immediate action. No defensive language appeared. No excuses appeared. Just accountability. Employees across all locations received copies. Customers shared screenshots online. Community organizations praised the transparency. For the first time since the story began, many people felt cautiously hopeful. Actions followed quickly. Darren's suspension became permanent termination. Philip Turner was immediately removed from his leadership position, pending review. Additional investigations began across multiple locations. Independent auditors entered the process. Outside oversight replaced internal shortcuts. The changes happened faster than anyone expected. Yet Maxwell knew policy changes alone would never be enough. Rules matter. Culture matters more. Late that afternoon, he visited Magnolia Grill again. Not publicly. No cameras followed him, no reporters knew. The restaurant remained closed during the review process. Inside, the dining room felt different, quiet, empty, reflective. Sunlight filtered through the same windows. Chairs rested upside down on tables. The espresso machine stood silent behind the counter. Denise happened to be there, helping prepare for reopening. She looked surprised when Maxwell entered. Then she smiled, a genuine smile, the first one he had seen from her without fear hiding behind it. They spoke for nearly an hour. About the restaurant, about customers, about employees, about leadership. Denise admitted she had considered quitting several times, not because she disliked hospitality, because she felt invisible. Maxwell listened carefully. Her honesty mattered. By the time their conversation ended, he had learned something important. Many organizations lose talented people long before those people actually leave. They lose them the moment they stop feeling heard. As evening settled outside, Maxwell walked toward the exit. Before leaving, he paused near the counter. His eyes landed on the tip jar. The same jar holding the coins Darren had thrown. It still sat exactly where he left it. Denise noticed him looking. "I haven't touched it," she said. Maxwell smiled softly. Neither spoke for a moment. Then Denise revealed something unexpected. Earlier that afternoon, corporate leadership had contacted her directly. Not about the investigation, not about testimony, about a promotion. A promotion that would change her future completely. Denise sat quietly behind the counter, still trying to process the news. The promotion felt unreal. For years, she had arrived early, stayed late, and done everything possible to support customers and co-workers. Most days, her effort went unnoticed. Recognition rarely reached employees like her. Now everything was changing. Maxwell listened as she described the phone call. Corporate leadership had offered her a new position, assistant manager. The title alone carried responsibility. The opportunity carried something even more important: trust. Denise admitted she almost cried after hanging up, not because of the promotion itself, because someone finally saw her. Maxwell understood exactly what she meant. People often underestimate the power of being recognized. Most workers do not expect applause. They simply want fairness, respect, acknowledgement. The conversation continued long after sunset. Outside, rain began falling lightly across Atlanta. Streetlights reflected against wet pavement. Passing cars created ribbons of gold and white through the darkness. Inside Magnolia Grill, hope slowly replaced the tension that had dominated the building for years. The following week became one of the busiest periods in company history. Investigators completed reviews. Human resource specialists interviewed employees. Independent consultants examined workplace culture. Every recommendation pointed toward the same conclusion. The company needed more than discipline. It needed transformation. Maxwell agreed. A series of major changes followed. Anonymous reporting systems were introduced. Independent oversight boards were established. Customer concerns would no longer disappear inside management offices. Employees gained direct channels for reporting misconduct. Training programs expanded dramatically. Not superficial presentations, not quick online courses, real conversations, real accountability, real education. The goal was simple: prevent another Magnolia Grill. Across the city, public interest continued growing. Community groups invited Maxwell to speak. Business organizations requested meetings. Universities asked for discussions about leadership. Many expected him to focus on the viral video. Instead, he focused on responsibility. During one event, a student asked why he never revealed his identity immediately. The room waited for his answer. Maxwell paused thoughtfully. Then he smiled. Because people show you who they are when they believe you cannot affect their future. The audience grew silent. The statement stayed with many attendees long after the event ended. Meanwhile, reporter Maya Bennett continued following developments. Her investigation uncovered additional stories from employees across the hospitality industry. Not just within Brooks Hospitality, everywhere: servers, hosts, security staff, kitchen workers, managers. Many described environments where speaking up felt dangerous. Others described organizations where accountability existed only on paper. The Magnolia Grill incident had become a mirror. People saw their own experiences reflected inside it. Some saw injustice, others saw silence, many saw both. Weeks passed, public attention remained intense. News programs discussed workplace culture. Business schools analyzed leadership failures. Community leaders referenced the story during public forums. What began as a restaurant confrontation had evolved into a national conversation. And still, Maxwell rarely discussed Darren. That surprised many people. Reporters expected anger, viewers expected revenge. Instead, Maxwell consistently returned to the same point. The problem was never one individual. The problem was allowing harmful behavior to continue unchecked. That distinction mattered, because focusing only on Darren would allow everyone else to avoid responsibility. Late one afternoon, Maxwell visited company headquarters for a leadership meeting. Large windows overlooked the city skyline. Sunlight filled the conference room. Executives reviewed reports detailing progress across multiple locations. Customer satisfaction scores improved. Employee retention increased. Complaint response times decreased dramatically. The changes were working. Yet Maxwell remained cautious. Trust takes years to build, moments to destroy, and constant effort to maintain. As the meeting ended, Patricia stayed behind. She carried several documents. Her expression suggested unfinished business. "There's something else," she said. Maxwell immediately noticed her tone. It wasn't concern, it wasn't excitement, it was uncertainty. Patricia placed a folder on the table. Inside were legal notices, correspondence, requests, statements. Maxwell reviewed the contents carefully. Then he stopped. One particular document caught his attention. The name at the top was familiar. Very familiar. Darren Cole, the former manager, had officially responded, and according to the paperwork, he was preparing to challenge everything. His termination, the investigation, the public narrative. All of it. Patricia watched Maxwell read. The room remained silent. Outside, clouds drifted slowly across the Atlanta skyline. Inside, a new chapter quietly began. Because Darren Cole was no longer trying to save his job. He was trying to rewrite the story. And the claims inside that folder threatened to create an entirely different battle. The conference room remained quiet after Patricia delivered the folder. Sunlight filtered through the windows, casting long shadows across the polished table. Maxwell continued reading while the city moved far below. Every page revealed the same strategy. Darren Cole was attempting to change the narrative. He claimed the investigation had been unfair. He claimed emotions had influenced decisions. He claimed the company acted too quickly. Most surprisingly, he claimed he had become the victim. Patricia watched Maxwell carefully. Many executives would have reacted with anger. Others would have laughed. Maxwell did neither. He simply turned another page. The years had taught him something important. People rarely see themselves as villains, even after causing harm, even after undeniable evidence. Many convince themselves they are misunderstood. That appeared to be exactly what was happening. The legal documents contained statements attempting to minimize everything that occurred inside Magnolia Grill. Darren described the incident as a misunderstanding. He described his comments as jokes. He described the viral video as incomplete. Unfortunately for him, the facts told a different story. The recording existed, the witnesses existed, the complaints existed, the deleted records existed. Reality does not disappear because someone dislikes it. Still, the challenge created complications. Reporters immediately discovered the filing. News organizations requested comments. Social media erupted once again. People debated responsibility. People debated accountability. People debated forgiveness. The conversation became louder than ever. Across Atlanta, television stations revisited the original footage. Interviews aired again. Experts discussed workplace discrimination. Community leaders emphasized the importance of transparency. The story returned to headlines, this time with even greater attention. Meanwhile, Denise continued adapting to her new role. Assistant manager responsibilities arrived quickly. Schedules, training sessions, employee meetings, customer concerns, the workload increased dramatically. Yet she embraced every challenge. Her confidence grew each day. Co-workers noticed the difference. Customers noticed it too. Something had changed inside Magnolia Grill. Employees smiled more naturally. Conversations felt easier. Tension no longer lingered in every corner. People seemed comfortable again. The transformation was not perfect. No workplace ever is. But it was real. One afternoon, Denise gathered employees before opening. The dining room remained empty. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows. Coffee brewed quietly behind the counter. She spoke honestly, not as a manager, as someone who understood fear. She encouraged employees to speak up. She reminded them that concerns mattered. She promised every voice would be heard. Several staff members later admitted it was the first time they truly believed management meant those words. Trust had started returning. Elsewhere, Maya Bennett continued investigating. Her latest reports focused on positive changes emerging from the controversy. New reporting systems appeared across multiple businesses. Independent oversight programs expanded. Community organizations partnered with local employers. The movement continued growing. People shared stories not only about injustice, but about improvement, about accountability, about hope. The conversation was evolving. One evening, Maya interviewed Maxwell during a community forum. The auditorium was full. Teachers, business owners, students, parents, retirees, people from every background filled the seats. Near the end of the discussion, Maya asked a simple question. What was the hardest part of that day? The audience became silent. Many expected him to mention the insult. Others expected him to mention the humiliation. Maxwell surprised everyone. The silence, he answered. The room remained still. Not Darren's words, not the coins. The silence. He paused. The memory clearly remained vivid. A room full of decent people watched something wrong happen. Most looked away because speaking felt uncomfortable. That silence hurt more than anything else. And nobody interrupted, nobody disagreed. Many people lowered their eyes because they understood exactly what he meant. Courage is often discussed in dramatic moments, yet real courage frequently appears in ordinary places. A restaurant, a workplace, a classroom, a neighborhood. A moment when remaining silent feels easier than doing what is right. The audience rewarded his answer with a standing ovation. Not because it was powerful, because it was true. Weeks later, Darren's challenge continued moving through legal channels. His arguments generated headlines but gained little support. Evidence remained overwhelming. Witnesses remained consistent. Facts remained unchanged. Still, the process forced everyone to revisit the past, and sometimes revisiting the past reveals something unexpected. Late one afternoon, Maxwell received a call from Patricia. Her voice carried unusual urgency. Not panic, not concern, something else. "You need to see this," she said. An hour later, Maxwell sat inside her office reviewing newly uncovered documents. Additional correspondence, archived communications, internal notes. The material revealed a detail nobody had previously discovered, a detail capable of changing everything. Because Darren had not acted alone during the incident. Another person inside Magnolia Grill had knowingly helped create the situation. Someone everyone believed was merely a bystander. Someone whose role had remained hidden. Until now. As Maxwell turned the final page, his expression hardened. Outside, evening shadows stretched across Atlanta. Inside the office, a deeper truth finally emerged, and the name printed at the top of that document shocked him completely. Maxwell stared at the final page for a long moment. The office remained silent. Outside, Atlanta glowed beneath the fading evening sky. Traffic moved through the streets below. Office lights flickered on across distant buildings. Yet inside Patricia's office, none of that mattered. Only the name on the document mattered. Marcus Reed. The security guard. The man everyone believed had simply followed orders. The man Maxwell had given a second chance. The discovery felt impossible. Patricia slid another file across the desk. Additional emails, internal messages, archived reports. Together, they painted a troubling picture. Months before the incident, Marcus had privately reported concerns involving Darren's behavior. Several messages described inappropriate treatment of customers. Others documented complaints from employees. Then the record stopped, not because the problems ended, because Marcus stopped reporting them. One message explained why. Darren had promised him a promotion. Better hours, higher pay, more responsibility. All Marcus needed to do was remain quiet. And for months he did. The realization disappointed Maxwell deeply. Not because Marcus was evil, because he knew better. That made it worse. People often imagine injustice survives through hatred alone. Sometimes it survives through convenience. Sometimes through fear. Sometimes through silence, purchased one compromise at a time. The next morning, Maxwell asked Marcus to meet him privately. The conversation took place inside an empty conference room. Sunlight streamed through large windows. A fresh pot of coffee sat untouched on the table. Neither man seemed interested in drinking any. Marcus immediately sensed something was wrong. The nervousness showed on his face. Maxwell placed the documents in front of him. No accusations, no raised voice, just evidence. Marcus read quietly. The color drained from his face. His shoulders lowered. For several minutes, he said nothing. Then he closed his eyes. The truth finally caught up with him. "I should have done more," he whispered. Maxwell nodded. The answer was honest. Painfully honest. Marcus explained everything. At first, he believed management would address the problems. Later, he convinced himself the situation would improve. Eventually, fear took over. Fear of losing income, fear of retaliation, fear of standing alone. The same fears many people experience. The explanation did not erase responsibility, but it explained it. Maxwell listened carefully. When Marcus finished speaking, the room remained quiet. No dramatic speeches followed. No anger, no humiliation, just truth. "You weren't responsible for Darren's choices," Maxwell said. Marcus looked up. "But you became responsible for your own." The words landed heavily because they were true. Marcus nodded slowly. Tears filled his eyes for the first time. Not tears of self-pity, tears of regret. The kind that arrive when excuses finally disappear. After a long discussion, Maxwell made a decision. Marcus would remain employed, not because the mistake was small, because accountability and growth could exist together. However, additional training, oversight, and leadership development would follow. The second chance came with responsibility, real responsibility. Marcus accepted every condition, without argument, without negotiation. Months passed. Magnolia Grill continued changing. Employee satisfaction improved. Customer trust returned. The reporting system worked. Concerns received responses. Managers received accountability. The culture slowly transformed. Not overnight. Real change never happens overnight. But it happened. One afternoon, Maxwell returned to Magnolia Grill. The same sunlight filled the dining room. The same scent of coffee and pecan pie drifted through the air. The same jazz music played softly in the background. Yet everything felt different, healthier, warmer, more welcoming. Denise now managed much of the daily operation. Employees respected her. Customers appreciated her. Her confidence had grown into leadership. Marcus continued working security, this time with a stronger understanding of what courage required. The brass plaque near the entrance remained in place. Every guest in this restaurant deserves dignity. Simple words, powerful words, words earned through painful lessons. Maxwell ordered the same meal as before, coffee, pecan pie. He sat quietly and watched people enjoy their afternoon. Families laughed, friends shared conversations, employees moved confidently through the dining room. Nobody looked uncomfortable, nobody looked afraid. The restaurant finally felt like the place it should have been all along. Before leaving, Maxwell stopped near the counter. The original tip jar still sat there. The coins remained inside. Nobody had removed them. They had become a reminder, a lesson, a symbol. Denise smiled when she noticed him looking. "New employees always ask about those coins," she said. Maxwell smiled back. "And what do you tell them?" Denise glanced around the dining room, then toward the plaque, then toward the employees. "I tell them dignity matters, every single time." Maxwell nodded. Nothing else needed to be said. As he walked toward the exit, sunlight poured through the glass doors. The afternoon felt peaceful. The city continued moving beyond the restaurant walls. Life continued, yet something important had changed. Not because one man lost a job, not because a video went viral, not because headlines filled the news. Something changed because people finally decided silence was no longer acceptable. And sometimes that decision changes everything. The truth is simple. Most of us will never own a company. Most of us will never appear in a viral video. Most of us will never stand at the center of a national conversation, but every one of us will face moments when we must choose. Speak or stay silent. Help or look away. Stand up or sit comfortably. Those choices define character more than titles ever will. And perhaps that was always the real story. Not the coins, not the restaurant, not the headlines. The choice every person in that dining room faced. The same choice all of us face sooner or later. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, your viewing location, and share this video.